Welcome back. Thanks for staying with In Your Interest. On the second segment, we talk about Pax Silica. What is this alliance? Why does it matter at this point in time? What's the crucial significance here? And how does it intersect with India's AI and semiconductor ambitions? Take a look at this. If the last century was defined by a race for oil and steel, this new era is being built on silicon, chips, and artificial intelligence. A monumental shift has just occurred in the corridors of New Delhi. Today, at the AI Impact Summit, India officially joined Pax Silica, a US-led strategic alliance designed to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy. By signing this declaration, India has effectively joined a tech iron curtain, quote-unquote, aimed at cutting off the world's resilience and reliance on China. The goal is to cut reliance on adversaries like China with a focus on semiconductors, artificial intelligence infrastructure, and rare earth ecosystems. We've got some reactions. Listen in.
Silica, which is an agreement between many countries with US for the semiconductor supply chain and semiconductor value chain. Today, India also became a part of that Pax Silica. It's a very important historic event for us because our semiconductor industry has evolved very well in the last decade. Today, we are designing 2 nanometer chips. Our manufacturing ecosystem is coming up. Our equipment manufacturing ecosystem and material manufacturing ecosystem will also come up in the coming years. In that journey, it's very important to position India as a trusted country which the entire world would like to partner with.
This month, we concluded the interim trade agreement, a deal that shapes the economic contours of the Indo-Pacific. We overcame friction points that had held us back for far too long. That agreement wasn't just about trade flows or tariff schedules. It was about 2 great democracies saying we will build together, not just buy from one another. And now today, we take the next step. India joins Pax Silica, the coalition that will define the 21st century economic and technological order.
I think this is part of a much bigger story about India and the US working together at every layer of the supply chain stack to help reinforce our shared economic security. Ultimately, Pax Silica is an economic security coalition that does not follow the typical geometries of geopolitical alliances. It is a group of countries that realize that shared supply chains are actually more binding than shared ideology. And so we're very happy to be here and we're very excited to partner with India.
Now, Pax Silica is a US-led tech alliance that started in December 2025 as a State Department framework for a secure silicon supply chain. It covers the full AI and chip stack, from minerals and chips to data centers and networks. The alliance seeks to reduce coercive dependencies such as reliance on China for rare earths and legacy chips. It builds trusted tech partnerships through joint ventures and protects sensitive technology. It also drives secure innovation growth to help aligned nations scale artificial intelligence, that too safely. India brings strong assets to this partnership, needless to say. The alliance are predicting 1 million chip jobs, and India serves as a talent hub. Indian engineers are designing next-gen 2nm semiconductor chips. India's market of 1.45 billion people drives massive AI data scale. The nation has the world's 3rd largest rare earth reserves. Its strategic location sits at the crossroads of Asian supply chains. This tech bet for India raises questions about freedom versus dependence. On the risk side, industrial policy space may shrink. There could be pressure to match US export controls. Screening of Chinese investments might get stricter. Flexibility with Beijing could reduce as well. There is also exposure to supply chain retaliation. On the gain sides, however, India gets assured access to advanced chips and artificial intelligence. It reduces reliance on China. There will be greater inflows of capital and technology. India gains a seat at the tech rule-making table. It allows multi-alignment without a formal alliance. Big questions that we're trying to decode. Is India trading away its industrial flexibility by aligning so closely with Washington's Pax Silica? Will this bet ensure our digital freedom or create a new kind of dependence? Meera Shankar, former ambassador to the United States, continues to be with us. Many thanks for staying on, Madam Ambassador. And Siddharth Pai, Managing Partner, 314 Capital, is with us also on the broadcast. Siddharth, let's get the snowball rolling here. tell the viewers and educate the viewers about the timing, the significance, and how crucial is this Pax Silica? How critical is control over critical minerals and chips for true AI leadership? Can India lead this artificial intelligence architecture without securing this upstream supply chain? Will Pax Silica meaningfully improve India's access? And we're talking about advanced fabs, AI infrastructure, frontier models, or is it more of a diplomatic framework that we see on our television screens?
I think if the 20th century was actually defined by oil and energy, I think the 21st century is going to be defined by compute and silicon. So I think that's actually been the core aspect and the reason why India decided to end up actually joining this particular alliance as well. In order for India to end up actually leapfrogging the current technological limitation that it has, it does need to end up actually learning from the best. It does need to end up actually investing with the best. It does need to end up actually designing with the best as well. And the US and the framework that they've actually gotten as of now, in Taiwan as a non-participant signatory for that particular, it's a non-signatory participant, for that particular matter, means that a good chunk of the world's entire supply chain, when it comes to design, when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to raw materials, when it comes to integration, is actually part of this entire piece. If you look at the opposite of this, which is actually aligning with China, China has actually decided on a model that is completely self-contained to end up actually serving the domestic market, getting incubated that way, reaching the economies of scale, and then actually scaling forward also. So the choice actually become fairly apparent. Either you go towards an open market infrastructure that India has been pivoting towards, or you go towards a closed market infrastructure where you are actually contingent on the vagaries of the Chinese policy. And if you look at the historic relationship between both the countries also as of now, China has been a lot more inimical to us compared to the US. So it is the right choice. It's a structural alignment while retaining the flexibility of diplomacy that India has always maintained to end up actually striking different alliances with different people.
You know, I don't understand artificial intelligence as well as many of the netizens out there. And there are several critiques, on social media. They say joining a trusted tech coalition could accelerate India's ecosystem. But then on the other hand, it's the big Impact AI Summit that's been underway, and people have been constantly talking about AI sovereignty. So does it also risk dependence on Western compute and standards when someday Washington suddenly says, okay, no more GPUs, no more TPUs? What happens then? Does our AI growth come to a grinding halt?
I think this is not an exclusive partnership. I think that's the most important component that's there. It's about learning from the best. It's about actually delivering on those particular aspects as well. And India's had a studied history of actually being non-aligned. Even during the Cold War also, when we had two large warring camps, we played well with the US. We actually played well with Russia as well, even though we ideologically aligned a lot more with Russia because of the socialist tendencies also. I think even when it comes to this, it's not exclusive. India does maintain its sovereignty. India continues to develop its own sovereign models, develop its own supply chain when it comes to silicon as well as its own design and execution capabilities also. So this is an accelerant. It's not actually a capitulation to the past that be. And I think social media is a terrible barometer for mood, because you see these small minority voices who are just contrarian for the sake of being contrarian end up actually becoming the loudest over there. I think it's a strong strategic move. We retain our flexibility, we learn from the best, and we get the acceleration that we as a nation actually deserve.
All right. We can also see Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, consulting editor, the Business Standard, also with us on the broadcast. Many thanks for taking out the time, sir. But Madam Ambassador, let me come to you quickly. Where next? Does joining a US-led tech coalition alter how China will now view India, geopolitically? We've been talking about it in the previous segment as well. But is Pax Silica a strategic alignment move? Or is it consistent with India's multi-alignment doctrine? And how do you think China is going to be looking at all of this?
I don't see it as compromising India's multi-alignment. It's an alliance or a grouping in a particular segment of the economy where India doesn't have capabilities at present. We have capabilities in the IT, software, service industry. We design chips. But we have very incipient capability right now, which is being built in the field of fabrication and semiconductors. Similarly, with regard to artificial intelligence, it's two countries, US and China, which have the platforms which are being developed. But there are also open source platforms, and India needs to ensure that even as it ties up in Pax Silica, it continues to develop its own sovereign models and provides incentives for Indian companies to master the full cycle from cloud to servers to data banks and so on, so that we have the ability to have sovereignty in this field, even as we benefit from collaborations by being part of a larger group where technology is available, which is looking at creating security of resources, particularly critical minerals, and so on. So, if you remember with Joe Biden also, one of the crucial bilateral areas of cooperation had been this initiative on critical and emerging technologies, which had identified.
Who decides on India's energy policy? Is it New Delhi or is it Washington? Why we're talking about it? Well, let's break it down for all our viewers. We examined the recent tensions in the US-India relations over Russian oil imports and trade policies. This issue raises questions about diplomacy, energy choices, and national independence. A high-stakes trade deal that promised relief for Indian exporters is now at the center of a heated debate over India's sovereignty. On one side, the United States claims it has secured a historic commitment from India to completely halt Russian oil imports. On the other, New Delhi remains firm, stating that its energy decisions are made only in the interest of its 1.4 billion people. The story begins with comments from US Ambassador Sergio Gore, who claims that India has committed to diversifying its oil sources away from Russia. He stated that President Trump's stance has been clear on this matter. However, India has not confirmed any plan to stop Russian imports completely. Officials in New Delhi say their energy purchases are driven by national interests and such as cost and, of course, availability. Sergio Gore, US Ambassador to India, reiterated that Washington's stance is clear. They expect all allies to diversify away from Russian energy to help end the conflict in Ukraine.
On the oil, there's an agreement. I also don't want to be given out too much in the sense that what private conversations happened occurred between the two leaders. We have seen India diversify on their oil. There is a commitment. This is not about India. The United States doesn't want anyone buying Russian oil. The president has been very clear on this. He wants this war to end.
Now, on the trade front, many Indian exports faced a total tariff burden of up to 50% by August 2025. A new trade deal with the US in February 2026 rolls back these punitive measures. An executive order ends the 25% oil-linked duties starting February 7th, 2027. There is also a reciprocal tariff cut to 18%, which is below the levels for Vietnam and Malaysia. As part of this, the United States sets up a monitoring mechanism for India's oil sourcing. A snapback clause means that the 25% duty could return if Russian imports resume. Now, is India being singled out under the US lens on Russian oil? For China, there is no India-style levy, even though China remains Russia's largest fossil fuel buyer. China's Russian crude imports have surged into 2026, and secondary sanctions could risk global price shocks. For Turkey, the United States uses diplomatic pressure rather than tariffs. Turkish refiners have cut crude intake but still buy refined products. Turkey's status as a NATO ally seems to shape US restraint, with no direct punitive oil tariff like the one proposed for India. This situation puts India's strategic autonomy on the line. The United States asserts